There we go. Is most everyone here? I think so. Most recent videos already up and available. I love this comic. Good stuff. Okay. We finished on mediation. We're going to go back. There's more to do with mediation. We haven't covered it all. And I'd like to do another model and then do a more complex model. So here we are. This was the model we did. I'm going to run this again. Just to, again, repetition helps. I know the first time through we don't always get it. So I'm going to run through it a little bit faster this time. We'll record what happens, but I'm going to do a different mediator. So we run this just as is. Hit the up arrow. Hope something happens. Nothing's happening. Awesome. Let me go to the analysis properties, see if our output. I don't have standardized estimates checked or squared multiple correlations. So I'll check those, close that, save it, and then run it. Okay. We had 0.28. We found that before. We'd go stick it in a table like this. 0.28. We know from before it is significant, but I'll show you where to find that. That's in the output and the regression weights table right here. This regression weights table, it is star star star, which means at this point less than 0.001, 99.9% confidence. So the direct X to Y effect is significant. Let's throw a different mediator in there this time. I'm going to throw in useful. Last time we threw in enjoy. Connect them with arrows. Give them an error term with that little box and circle thingy. Name that error term with the plugin. Name unobserved variables. And then we just run it again. Up arrow. Interestingly enough, this also fully mediates the effect of playfulness on decision quality. As far as we can tell, we haven't looked at p-values, but I'm pretty certain that this is going to be not significant, that this will be and this will be significant. And so we'd say this is a full mediation. We'll just double check that real quick. The direct effect is 0.07. I'll type that into here, 0.07. If I go look at the output, estimates. Oh, all right. The p-value is 0.098. Is that significant? Depends. If you're looking for 90 or 95% confidence level, that's less than 0.1, which is 90% confidence, but it's greater than 0.05.
Change the rules.
What if I change the roles?
As a mediation.
We'll talk about that in one moment. But at this point, yeah, it depends on your level of confidence you're seeking for. It really is borderline. I would say probably we have full mediation here, especially for, say, 95% confidence level, which is the mostly accepted confidence level. So over here, I would say not significant. Jolly pointed out, well, what if we switch the roles here? Make useful the the independent variable, make playful the mediating variable. One thing we have to think about with mediators in particular is temporal precedence. I know this is a variance model, it's not a process model, but even in variance models, we have to take into account temporal precedence. Which thing happens first? Which one's the cause? Which one's the effect? We play with it, therefore we find it useful, therefore we make good decisions with it. I can maybe buy that. We find it useful, therefore we play with it, therefore we make better decisions. I could buy that too. Just gotta think through the logic. Those both work. If we want, we can switch them real quick. All you have to do is rename them right here. Oh, down arrow. You don't have to follow along here, just watch. I'll make that playful and this useful. Run it. Fail. So playfulness does not mediate the effect of usefulness on decision quality. Usefulness on its own is a great predictor of decision quality and has very little to do, if anything, to do with the playfulness that results. Notwithstanding, if you find something useful, you will typically play with it more, be more playful. But playfulness on its own cannot predict decision quality, at least not in the context of observing the amount of usefulness you derive from it.
Can you see the p-value?
Of 0.07? Yeah, sure. It's going to be probably 0.098. That's my guess. What do you know? 0.098. That's what it was before. In this case, no mediation. Yep. And playfulness does not predict decision quality in this context. And so again, back to the point we made earlier, let me switch these back. Down arrow. Sure.
So before having the playfulness has effect on decision quality.
Yes.
So can you say no the effect suppression effect?
There is suppression going on. Yes. So the point, prior to adding usefulness, this was significant. We added usefulness, this is suppressed. What's really happening? Usefulness is a better explainer or predictor of the movement or variance in decision quality. It explains it better than playfulness does. And so usefulness gets the large regression rate. Whereas playfulness no longer is able to explain unique variance in decision quality. The variance it used to explain is better explained by usefulness. And so if we, again, don't include usefulness in the model, we go in and go forth and publish playfulness as the way to increase decision quality. Encourage your employees to play with their technology. That's an invalid claim. That's an invalid finding because they can play with it all they want. But unless that playing leads to more usefulness, it's useless. They won't make better decisions. Okay. Let us see what, oh wait, I didn't finish this. We need to bootstrap it. I need to talk about bootstrapping a little bit. So we have evidence that it probably is full mediation. I should delete that and say full. But we need to do a bootstrap. And let me talk about bootstrapping. So again, in the analysis properties, in the output tab, you need indirect, direct, and total effects. Those need to be estimated. And then in the bootstrap tab, you need to perform the bootstrap. I bump this up to 2000 and then do bias corrected intervals. Here's why. So what is going on in a bootstrap? The bootstrap randomly samples from your data set. We have 381 respondents in our data set. It'll, at random, replace responses from one of the respondents with the average. And it'll do this 2,000 times. It'll replace responses with the average. So if somebody answered a 5, but the average is a 3, that 5 now becomes a 3. And then we run the analysis, and then we run it and run it. And what this does is it sees how robust your estimates are if we replace with the mean 2,000 times. And so it provides a more,
You said inflate the value of the regression rate.
it can inflate due to central tendency.
When you use this strategy, more real in compared to the population.
Okay, so what does this do for us? What advantage do we gain by bootstrapping? Now I'll answer this question. The advantage we gain is when we sample from a population, we only get that sample. So the estimates we calculate without bootstrapping are the accurate estimates for that sample. but they might not be accurate for the population. When we bootstrap, we run some sort of robustness tests. We see what are the averages, and are they consistent and reliable. And then what the bootstrap results represent are the average estimates after doing it 2,000 times. What's the average? And what does that do? That removes a lot of the error that's associated with only running it with the sample you collected. So these will be more accurate, most likely for the population, but not for your sample. Hope that makes some sense. Yeah.
Is there any magic number for how many times you do it? Like
Yeah.
5 million, 5,000, 10,000?
Sure. Okay, so back in the day, we do 200 to 500. 500 was really robust, and it would also take a few hours for run. Now we don't have that problem. Our computers are real powerful. There's a sort of threshold of diminishing returns. You get 2,000, and anything beyond that, the reduction in error is so nominal, it makes no difference. So I've actually run these tests, and there are papers published on it. It's called, you can do some Monte Carlo tests and other types of tests to determine the diminishing returns and reliability of different numbers of samples and resamples. And what this says, so if you increase, if we were to do 100 samples, our critical rate, I have to draw something. Okay, some dependence here. So error, I'm going to call that E. As error increases, critical ratios, like an F statistic or Z statistic or T statistic or something like that, decrease. And as critical ratios decrease, p-values increase, which means significance decreases, right? Or less significant. So there's some other things that play into this. As we bootstrap, as our bootstrap increases, error will decrease. So I should maybe do this the opposite way here. As bootstrap increases, error decreases, critical ratios increase, p-values decrease, significance increases. This is also why n, sample size, as sample size increases, error decreases. And therefore, we're more likely to find a significant p-value. So that's why more sample size is better, but also the more sample size you have, the more carefully you have to read significance, because you always find significance because you have no error, because your error is so tiny.
So you're in the 2,000.
There, yeah, I put 2,000 in there. Anything more than that is not going to help you out. You can probably do less to 1,000, you can get the same results. Anything more than that, unless you have a wildly complex model. But ours is not wildly complex, especially with some of it. Okay, hope that's helpful. So we run this, run it, and we look at the bootstrapped estimates down in matrices. So here are your matrices. Here's your standardized indirect effect. It is 0.204 right here. I throw that into this table. 0.204. Is that significant? It definitely is. If I go down here to the bootstrap area, confidence, bias corrected, two-tailed, here it is, 0.001. If I want to know if that's less than 0.001, I can break it out to 5 decimals. It is 0.00056. So that is significant at the 99.9% confidence level. So we have, again, full mediation. Because the direct effect from X to Y with the mediator became completely non-significant after adding the mediator, whereas before it was significant. And the indirect effect is significant. Now this is a really simple model. You will almost never test a model this simple. So let me show you. Let's make it a little more complicated. Unless there are questions before we proceed. I don't want to proceed without understanding. Okay. I'm going to throw enjoyment back in and draw some arrows. We now have 2 mediators. Enjoyment needs an error term. Check out this. If you click on it multiple times, it rotates at 45 degrees. It's pretty fun. I could do this for hours. It's really good. But it makes it so you can move it. Plugins, name the unobserved variable, and we're ready to roll. So I hit run. Here they all are. Oh, wow, look, now look at this. The p-value from, or I mean the regression weight from playful to decision quality, gone. There is no variance in decision quality explained by playfulness when we take into account enjoyment and usefulness. All these other effects are going to be significant. Notice our R-squared is really getting substantial now, 34%. In some fields, that's substantial. In finance, that's mind-blowing. Okay. The question is, we typically don't theorize that the positive effect from playfulness to decision quality is mediated through usefulness and enjoyment. We don't do that, right? We typically don't have multiple mediators in a single hypothesis because you typically don't want to theorize about multiple relationships that are not interdependent, because what if one fails and the other one succeeds? Do you have support? Partial support? So the question is, does usefulness mediate the effect from playfulness to decision quality? If we go look at the bootstrapped results, let's go look at this. Go into estimates and matrices, and here is the standardized indirect effect, 0.287. Here is the p-value for that, 0.00045. But the problem is, and this is where scholars are still fighting each other, that value, this p-value, and the estimate we just looked at, these don't represent the indirect effect of playfulness on decision quality through usefulness. They represent it through usefulness and through enjoyment. There are multiple indirect effects being taken into account here. And so how on earth do we know if usefulness is mediating the effect? You could delete one and do one at a time, but we've learned when you delete a mediator, you can't really rely on the effects you observe, right? Because they're going to change. So that's a bad idea. We could delete this path right here, or right here, and then we only have one indirect path. But again, you're choosing deliberately to ignore a potentially effective part of the model, a significant part of the model. So that's going to change everything. That's a bad idea. There are two ways to do this appropriately, somewhat appropriately. First way, I'm not going to teach it because I haven't learned it yet. I have videos for it, and it involves a lot of programming. So in Amos, you can actually come down here. You ever wonder what this means? Not estimating any user-defined estimand. You can create user-defined estimands, and in the Amos programming language, I think it uses VB and also uses C sharp. You can write programs that will estimate this, and then will estimate this separately, and come up with the p-values for that. Super cool and slick. If you want the videos for it, I'm happy to send that to you. Just email me. I haven't developed a useful video for it. The videos that are made are really boring and hard to follow. So I need to make a video for it so that it's not boring. So that's one way. I haven't made that yet because I just haven't gotten to it. So the other way, the way that we've been using in the past, is to run a Sobel test. Now, for some of you, red flags will be going up, and Sobel tests are bad. They have errors in them, they inflate things. They're not robust to non-normal data or low sample size, and that's all true. But we fortunately have normal data and a very large sample size. So we're okay. And what this allows you to do, let me show you a Sobel test. If you don't know where to find a Sobel test, as in all other cases, Google it. Sobel test. There's one. Here's the free Sobel test calculator. I like that one. Daniel Soper's a nice guy. I actually interviewed for a job with him. And then he told me I couldn't live off the salary they gave me in Fullerton. So I didn't take it down. This is a Sobel test. What it does is it allows you to independently calculate this effect, regardless of the number of mediators you have. All you need is the A to B, which is sort of the X to Y, and well, this A and this B relationship plus their error. I'll show you where to find those. Let's push that over there. Let me push this over here. So here's our output. There we go. Okay. If we go to the estimates, and you can do this with the bootstrapped estimates or regular estimates. Bootstrap would probably be more effective, so we should do that. Let's go to the bootstrapped estimates, which is matrices, standardized direct effects. Let me cut this down to 3 decimals. Okay, so you already calculated these standardized direct effects. We're going to stick the direct effects for A, which is from our X to our M variable. In this case, it's playful to, let's say, enjoy, because that's easy to access right there. We'll stick that right here. Yep. 556. And then from our B line is, whoops, over here, mediator to dependent variable. So that would be enjoy to decision quality right here, 182. And then our standard error, it gives that to us down here, bootstrap standard errors. That's that one right there. 0.040 for that first one. Not very much error, that's good. And then for this one, 0.044. Bottom right, from useful to, nope, that's not one, sorry, 0.66, enjoy to decision quality. Did I mess that up on the estimates too? 182, no, we got that, okay. Cool. So you stick in the standard error and the estimates, hit calculate, and it gives you a critical ratio, or a critical value of 2.7. This is greater than 1.96, which means it is probably significant. It even gives you a two-tailed probability, 0.006. So it's significant at the 99% confidence level, meaning enjoyment does mediate the effect from playfulness to decision quality. How would you report that? You would report the Sobel test. You would say that you bootstrapped, because people are going to say, well, did you bootstrap? Say, yeah, I bootstrapped. These are the bootstrapped estimates and bootstrapped standard errors. But I ran a Sobel test because I had multiple mediators. And here's the Sobel statistic for, or here's the Sobel test statistic, and here's the p-value for that Sobel test. Therefore, we have full mediation or partial mediation or whatever. Yes?
If your data based on your model prediction is going yesterday, suggest the sequential mediation, 2 mediator. All you can.
Oh, this is fun stuff. Okay, let's do that.
Based on this one, 11 works.
Let's play with it. It'll be fun. I think it'll work. We'll try, if I understand you correctly. Like this? Chain model. Okay, so we have a chain model, multiple mediation going on, right? So what is our theory? Is our theory that playfulness affects enjoyment through usefulness, usefulness affects decision quality through enjoyment, or is our theory that playfulness affects decision quality through usefulness and enjoyment? No matter what it is, bootstrapping will take care of it for us. Here's why. There's only one indirect effect for each of these hypotheses. There's only one indirect effect here. There's only one indirect effect here. There's only one indirect effect here. And so a bootstrap will take care of that for us. So just bootstrap in this case. The only case in which you would do a Sobel test is if you had, like we had before, multiple indirect effects from one IV to one DV. Or multiple IVs, multiple DVs, but when you're taking into consideration an IV and a DV, if there are multiple paths from that IV to that DV, you might want to run a Sobel test. Because if you just run it in a bootstrap, like we said before, you cannot determine with confidence if the mediation is going through this mediator or that mediator, or if it's just because it's going through both. Because the indirect effect the bootstrap calculates is for all indirect paths simultaneously. So that's why you need a Sobel test at this point. Or run the user-defined SNM. I'm really going to make a video for that. Make a way so you don't have to program. Maybe make a plugin. I should make a plugin for it. To do. Questions about that? That's the end of mediation. Cool. Okay, that either means you totally get it or you're totally lost. I'm going to opt to believe that you get it, because I believe in you. Okay. Plead the fifth, huh? All right. I have slides in here explaining that caveat, when to use Barron and Kenny. Here's another visual version. So in this top model, we have from X1 to Y2, or even from X1 to Y1, we have multiple indirect paths to get there. So you would run a Sobel test at this point. But here, from X1 to Y1, there is only one indirect path. There's only one way to get there, and so you can just bootstrap here. Okay. I'm actually meeting with some folks week after next. A bunch of methodologists are getting together we're going to put on some boxing gloves and duke it out, figure out what the best way to test mediation is. Because not everybody agrees with me on this, and I don't agree with them on all their stuff. So we're all getting together for a fun little powwow a week after next. So maybe I'll update everybody if turns out they have good logic for why I'm wrong. You watch us get bloody. Bunch of scholars duking it out. There we go. It'll be pretty boring. It'll be lively. I'll be there. It'll be fun. I think we're gonna have several drinks. I'll have lots of water. Okay. That's right. Do you want to play with mediation and see if you can find mediated effects? We totally got this. We want to move on. Practicing it would only take 20 minutes. Which would you prefer? We have plenty else to cover, but I don't want to move on if this is going to fade after this session. You want to try a model on your own? I don't see any sort of confirmation or disconfirmation. You guys are good poker faces. All right, here, okay, I want you to try a model real quick. It's just a 3-variable model. Yeah. If you want to try a Sobel test, run a 4-variable model with 2 mediators. Pick any variables you want from the bottom of the data set, the _C data set. We have those 7 variables. Use those. Ask questions, try to determine what type of mediation you're observing, or if there is any mediation at all. Make sure you use the correct test and you know why you're using that test. And then ask questions if you get stuck or lost. And I think we'll only spend 10 to 15 minutes on this actually. I don't think we need much more than that. That was very good. Amos barf. Okay. Hit OK. If you're getting Amos barf, Amos vomit, it's an error that doesn't make any sense. Make sure you close that error, save your model, and then try again. So it'll do that if you haven't saved yet. Only in the newest version. They keep improving Amos. They're making it worse. Amos. Wow, I'm sorry. Let me go back to here. Let's see. Actually, up one more. There we go.
Let's take order construct.
Mhm.
First of all, can we correlate the error terms of the dimensions of the second order construct?
Yes.
And second,
Because we expect them to be very similar. Yeah.
so when we do that and a bunch of other correlations inside the construct,
Mhm.
suddenly one of these
Yeah, you're gonna have-
correlations variance get negative.
Yes.
So is it possible just to constrain the variance with one?
Okay. There. What I would do then, to answer your question, yes, you can constrain the error variance to a very small positive number. I even have a citation for you for that if you want. 0.001 is a great number.
Okay.
But what I would try first, after you covary the errors of the first order constructs, remove all other error covariances on those constructs. And then if you need, you put them back one at a time.
Okay.
Because that covariance at the higher level is going to subsume some of the lower ones. And so what we might have here is sort of a loop.
Yeah. So it's ethical.
It is ethical to constrain that. Yeah. I just emailed it to someone just the other day. Let me pick it up.
Because I had something like financial risk, and it has so many different aspects. But two of these dimensions are highly correlated, so I correlate the error terms, and one of these variances collapse, get negative. So when I put over there constraint worked, but I didn't know.
Yeah, you can. Let's see. What would I search for? Very small. It would have been very recently. I just did it. Not that one. Not that one. None of those. Here we go. Variance. Negative error. That's forever ago. Where was it?
We don't have it?
Oh no, it was on YouTube. Poop. Then I don't know. I posted on YouTube and I can't search that. Where would it have been? Solar screen negative error variance. Oh man. So I responded to a comment on YouTube and I found the citation for it and I quoted it. It was on page 91, 199. I just can't remember the reference. Dang it.
So what was the keyword you searched?
I don't remember. Yeah, let me fix error variance. Error variance, negative. Something from coming. Nope. Small positive. Here we go. Small positive. Negative variance. Error variance. This one might work. It's none of the ones I saw, but
Okay, so it's negative error.
let me check right here. It might be here. I have to access the whole article. Let me get it right here. I think this might be it. Connection is private.
I think you see
I can.
Another name for it if you could.
Okay.
Since you connected to UCF.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Yes, this is the full article. Good. Whoops. 001. Sorry, scroll in here. Not this one.
I get the
Okay, you get the idea. Yeah. So they say
small positive variance error.
negative error or negative variance. Try that, and then small positive. And so they say, yeah, 0.001 is a small positive number you can constrain it to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
I have something to show you guys here.
Excellent.
I'm doing something wrong, obviously. What is that what
That's
happened?
awesome.
Isn't that awesome?
Yes.
I'm gonna just screw up really.
So what you did was you somehow drew single one factors on
Okay.
this thing.
Ah.
One of your error variances with plug-in, and then these also as
Ah.
so you use X.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
I was thinking about that. And it made more sense to understand that. Yeah, which is something I understand that scale. That's why I paused right before you ended it.
There's one variable unnamed.
So there's still one somewhere, so here
Okay.
what we can do is all these, all, it's not what it is, these, there it is.
Oh. Got it.
The regression. Yes. Actually, I think I should standardize for it. I should give them an unstandardized. I should let it find out. So here you could just use the unstandardized rates, or you could do the that's not standardized. So you're going from playful to enjoy. So that would be 0.7. From play, so it's useful. Play. Yeah, one. For this mediation, here's the number. This mediation, here's the number. Etc. Yeah, so you use a one indirect path. So we get more.
I get error messages. This is like bad flashback to graduate school. I'm telling you. in graduate school, I was on like the mainframe, and you just get like one space off, and you're like, error, and you have to find that little space. No. Bad flashbacks.
Quick correction. As we were doing the Sobel test, we're looking at it more. Some of us were doing Sobel tests. Use the unstandardized. I apologize for that. Use the unstandardized effects. Let me go back to the Sobel test here. Sobel test. There it is. When you're entering the A and B, I entered the standardized. I should have entered the unstandardized right here because you're entering a standard error, which is based on the unstandardized regression rate. So to find the unstandardized direct effects, it's just in the matrices right there, direct effects. Instead of standardized direct effects, use direct effects. That's the main difference. Sorry about the confusion there. Yeah.
This one, without this one. You're saying you tested this one without this one. Instead test this one without that one. I'm never bad practice. Always practice. Mediation. Now, what is it? Or partial indirect partial. So it's when it completely drops as partial. It has to be meaningfully. Is meaningfully with if it was like 3, 3, 2 here, and 3, 0 here, and just to do a partial like that. Doing good? Good. Oops, did I mess that up? Maybe. I might have messed that up. Did I mess it up? Between, no, usually it's maybe isolation between 8 degrees and and decision. I meant to write this should be information acquisition.
Okay.
I would use bootstrapping for all of them. In order to determine the significance of the indirect effect, because we have to fill out this column. And in order to get that indirect effect, we have to do bootstrapping. I'll go fix that slide.
No problem.
No, I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna use these in the future, so I hope. So now I have to put on here James Gaskin and Usley. That's right. There we go. All right.
Have you ever compared normal averages versus CFA versus regression?
I've never done versus the EFA one, but I have looked at the difference between the composites and the CFA and averages. They are different. Or better is a funny term, but more accurate would be the CFA. Conservative is the wrong word, it's just more accurate. It reaches the center of the trait to the construct better than average does. So you might have significant effects, or you might not. But whatever you do find is more accurate. And then good. And if you have that check. So you're good. And then what? You did. So you close that.
Yeah.
If you go to the up, then up 20. And then it's in estimates. And here they all are. If you look at matrices, you can see individually what section is. So we're just looking at standardized indirect. Now, when it says like this is playful, it says indirect fragment decision.
Oh, yeah.
Through
That
the
Yeah. Yeah, good. Amos.
There's no such thing as a good Amos, but that comes with videos that show
Okay,
you.
well, that's all I know. I'm more of a reader.
Oh, I'm so not a reader. The
Well,
Amos.
I will try to send video for you.
Okay.
All right. A good point brings up a good point. If you would like to be alerted every time I create a new video, just subscribe to the channel. It's free. Just go to YouTube and hit subscribe. And every time I make a new video, you'll be alerted. So if I view this as a subscriber, will that be on there? So if I'm not a subscriber, this button will be red and it'll say subscribe, question mark, right here. Just hit the subscribe button, and then every time I make a video, or every time one of these videos, like from the boot camp, is posted, or you can see when I'm live broadcasting, which is right now, so this is kind of recursive, it's kind of cool, it's having me talk about it while it's showing up. Anyway, every time anything happens on the channel, you'll get an email about it. And so you can be aware. Okay. I get nothing from that, so that's not a self-promoting thingy. That's for your own benefit. Okay. Here we go. Did anyone find indirect only mediation? Anyone find full mediation? Couple. Anyone find partial mediation? I know a couple found partial mediation. I doubt anyone found this, but did anyone find competitive mediation? I don't know if I have that in this data set. I'm not sure if I did. Well, cool. Here we go. Moderation. Does that really only have on that slide? Oh, there we go. Okay. We've talked about moderation just briefly in comparison to mediation. Here it is again. Moderation changes the nature of the relationship between the IV and the DV. So in this case, autonomy has a positive effect on satisfaction. The question is, well, always? Under what context? For whom? Is it changed by anything else? Is it amplified, dampened by something? What might change this relationship? What do you think? Autonomy does lead to satisfaction, right? The more autonomy you give me, the more satisfied I am. Is that always the case? No. We learn that with teaching methods. I just say, here's Amos. Go for it. Perfect autonomy. Right? You're so satisfied. You know, learn on your own. It doesn't work that way. So what would be a good moderator in this case? What would change this positive effect? Maybe to be negative, or at least to be weaker. They're so quiet.
Criticism.
Criticism? Criticism. So you give me autonomy, unsatisfied, but if you criticize my work, I don't want autonomy anymore. That's not making me happy. Yeah. Sense of independence. If I don't feel independent, yet you give me autonomy, that's kind of contradictory. Or let's pull it over to guidance. You're too independent. What you need is some guidance. And so right here, guidance would moderate this relationship. Yeah, the more guidance I have, or the more direction I feel like I have, the more autonomy increases my satisfaction. The less guidance I have, the less direction I feel like I have, the more autonomy hurts my satisfaction. I'm just lost. And so autonomy is terrible. I don't want autonomy when I don't know what I'm doing. So that is a moderator. That's one way to look at a moderator. There are some other ways. Here's an example. Focus has a positive effect on learning. The more I'm focused, the more I can learn. But this totally depends on how much sleep I got last night, right? If I got less sleep, there's still a positive effect here, but it's a weaker positive effect. If I got plenty of sleep, this is a very strong positive effect. Either way, there's a positive effect. It's just that the amount of sleep I got last night strengthens that positive effect. Yeah. Oh, this is such a good question.
My sleep defines my focus.
Okay. So could we move sleep actually over here? And sleep drives focus, focus drives learning. Okay, good. Now this is a mediator. When we focus, we get more sleep. That doesn't work. Doesn't make any sense. Therefore, this works better as a moderator than as a mediator.
Well, you might focus if you get more sleep. I mean, if you're more focused in life, you're probably going to get more sleep because your brain isn't around,
right,
going everywhere.
Let's jump out of abstracts. Consider a specific context. Let's consider a specific context.
That's right.
Because we want these to occur together. Focus drives learning immediately. Well, focus isn't going to drive sleep and learning immediately, right? If you're sleeping during this session, you're not going to learn very much unless you have some vision during your sleep. And then it probably won't be about SEM. And if it is, I don't know where that vision comes from. So this does not immediately drive this to drive this, and therefore would not be a mediator. Whereas focus might be a mediator for the effect sleep has on learning, because this can cause this, which can cause that.
Yes, that's what I meant. How do you decide that? Do you test both, or?
It's theory driven. Yeah, it's theory driven. Again, it has to make sense. Picture of my daughters. They just texted. It's theory driven. So, like we said before, if you're claiming this as the mediator or moderator, it doesn't work theoretically as a mediator. It just doesn't, because this doesn't drive it. It would only work as a moderator. Now, if you moved it all around and you just want to play with variables, which typically you don't want to do, you want to theorize a priori, right? You want to theorize, collect data, test it, and then report your findings. That's what we want to do. We don't want to be playing around with our models. That's called data fishing, I think. It happens all the time. So let's say we test this theory and it doesn't work. we really like this variable. We maybe just see if it works over here. That's up to you. It happens, and what we typically do, what I would do, and what reviewers would be cool with you doing typically, and most of you know this, you test your model, you say, if but if we consider this as a predictor, and this is a mediator, we learn something. And if you're learning something, then you're making intellectual contribution, and then it doesn't matter if your theory failed because you're still contributing knowledge. Yes?
I think in this kind of situation, when most possible, R-square is a good indicator to make decision.
If you want to make a statistically driven decision, yeah. Look at your R square. If this is the mediator, what's the R square here? If this is the mediator, what's the R square here? See which one's higher. Which one makes more sense theoretically? Which one makes more explanatory power statistically? But typically we draw these based on theory. A lot of stuff here. Let me see. I'm gonna place it all on the table and talk about it. There's a lot here. Try to ignore some of it. Let me get my pointer. Okay. We have two different types of moderation. There's multi-group moderation, which is where the moderator is categorical or nominal, like gender. Gender is a very good categorical variable. You can't have more or less gender than someone else. Religion is a good example. Industry is a good example. You can't have more or less industry. That's ambiguous meanings. You can't have more or less religion than someone. Then there's interaction, which is a metric moderator. And so if we were to take gender and try to consider it as a metric variable, we could think of masculinity scale. We're all on a different scale of masculinity. Very low end or very high end. We can do the same with femininity. And so it's no longer male or female, it's an increase in masculinity. And a high end means you're real macho, a low end means you're real feminine. And a change in that scale will strengthen or weaken that effect. And that's different than saying you're male or you're female. What we say for this is the effect between autonomy and job satisfaction is different for men than for women. For men, it's something. For women, it's something else. Stronger and weaker, or something like that, or negative and positive. On this one, we say something totally different. We theorize differently. We say an increase in masculinity will strengthen the relationship between autonomy and job satisfaction. Or we'll say masculinity strengthens the relationship between autonomy and job satisfaction. So a different way to argue it, different way to state your hypotheses, different logic. Also a different way to test it. This is how we would test it. If you're doing a multi-group analysis, you just create two models. Two separate models, one for men, one for women. Or one for whoever, one for whoever. Whatever your groups are. And you could have three groups, like I said, with industry. And then you test this effect. Are these effects different? Create a z-score or a z-statistic for those differences, a critical ratio, and then determine if there's a significant difference. Whereas for metric interactions, that kind of moderator, you end up multiplying these two together to create a new variable. And then you have a regression between that interaction term, that product term, and the dependent variable, and you include the moderator, in this case, as another exogenous predictor of the dependent variable. And we'll do those, we'll do both of those. Anyway, that's how you would model and theorize about it. Yeah?
If you have the possibility to do both, let's say in that case,
Yeah.
you can divide that masculinity into two high and low and conduct this one.
You can.
Is, I mean, the implication for which one is easy to write implication.
Okay. Okay, so let's get rid of gender, let's talk about age. Now we have young and old people, or however you want to say it, but young and old, right? Those under 60 and those over 60. I hope I'm cutting it close here. Okay, and we say those under 60 are young, those older 60 are not as young. And that would be a group, right? We have young and old folk. But we could also just throw in age, your exact age, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? through 100 or whatever age you are. There's a lady who lives just down the street. She just turned 101 last month. She's so sweet. Anyway, and you can stick age here as an interaction. Now, which is better? I'll tell you from experience, you almost never find significant interactions. It's just the way it works. I don't know why, what's with the math going on there. I don't know why you typically don't find significant interactions, at least not in my experience. But when you do, it's really cool. So I would try that if you have the opportunity. Plus, when you do it like this, you're not losing any of the richness of your data. Whereas if you cut it into low and high, you just made a 100-point scale into a 2-point scale. Very blunt. Yeah? And so this is richer. You typically find more significant effects this way. Easier to theorize, but not that tough to theorize. Yeah. Let's do it. I think. Yeah, let's do it. All right. Taking the models you were playing with, you had some models on your canvas. Let's just use those. I'll use the one I've been working with. There it goes. Let's do multi-group first, because that's so easy. And we've already done this. Let me redraw this the way it was. Let's see. Draw here, draw here. Get rid of this. Okay, here we are, back to where we were. And you'll recall from our invariance test during the CFA, we just double-click group number and change this. Let's just use gender, super easy. I already have a categorical variable for it. Let's just use male and female. Hit new, and female, and close. Again, that's on the group number. Double-click group number. It used to say group number 1 here, where I double-clicked right under these arrows right here. And then rename the first group male, and the second group, when you hit new, name it female. And close it. That's all right. So see where male is currently highlighted, or female now? See that area? Double click in that area. Yours will say group number 1. And then change group number 1 to male, and then hit new and make a female group, and then hit close. If you hit new again by accident and you have a third group, just double click that group and hit delete. Because it will throw you an error later if you have a group with no data. Okay, once you've done that, go to File, Data Files. Just where you enter the data. Double click on your second group, female, and go get that data again, wherever it was. The _C data. Bootcamp _C, wherever you saved that. Excuse me. And then go to click on the first group, male, go to grouping variable, click anywhere in here on a variable and hit G to go down to gender. Just click anywhere in here and then type G for gender. Once it's highlighting gender, hit OK. You'll do the same for female. Click on grouping variable, G for gender. And that'll highlight gender for you. Hit OK. For males, go back up to the male group. The grouping value, that button, is going to be 1, 288 males. OK. For females, click on the female group. Grouping value is 2, 91. And 2 people didn't report their gender. Okay. Once you've done that, and it looks like this, you have 288 out of 381 and 91 out of 381. You're in good shape. Does anyone need help to get to that point? Okay. This is just like the invariance test, except in the invariance test, we didn't want to see significant differences, but now we do. We really want to see significant differences. So here we go. Hit OK. And we're going to run it just to see what it looks like. Hit the up arrow. So for males, looking at standardized estimates. For males, we have 55, 55, 37, 19. Females, it drops significantly. Usefulness to decision quality drops. Playfulness to enjoyment increases a little bit. What was the other one? 32 to 37, 19 to 18. Those don't change a whole lot. R square, though, look at the R square. For females, the R square is 10 and 23 and 34. For males, 14, 38, and 30. So those are different, especially on decision quality. Look at that. Now we have to account for sample size differences. We have very different sample sizes. One 98 or 91 or something like that. The other one's 280 something. So those are different. We might expect a higher R square, all else equal, with a higher sample size. And we'll find more significant effects, not greater amplitude, but more significant effects for a higher sample size. But are they different? Are they different? Let's find out. The way we find out is you go to your analysis properties. And we don't need to perform this bootstrap right now unless we want to do moderated mediation, which I don't want to deal with. So you can uncheck the bootstrap. If you really want to know about moderated mediation, we can talk about it though. Output. Don't need the indirect, direct, and total effects. What we need is the critical ratios for differences. Right there, right in the middle there. Critical ratios for differences. Make sure that's checked on the output tab. And then you close that and run it. That's going to create a critical ratio for the difference between men and women for every path. Let's go look at that. Estimates, scalars, regression weights. Here they are. Yesterday we learned at the bottom left you have a toggle between male and female. You can toggle between the two. You'll notice the effects for females, the critical ratios are going to be lower because there's a lower sample size. Which means, back to this, we have lower sample size, we have greater error, we have lower critical ratios, higher p-values, less significance. So that's why we see those critical ratios being a little bit lower for females than for males. Let's find out if these are significant. Open the stats tools package. For those who weren't here yesterday, that's in the main root directory here, the SEM Bootcamp UCF. It's this thing called stats tools package, not the old one, but the current one. Once that's open, you go to the Group Differences tab. I made this initially for multi-group moderation, not for invariance tests. I was doing a job for this guy. He had a massive model, just enormous, with so many regression weights, and he had a moderator with 8 different values. It was for countries. He had 8 different countries, and he wanted me to test the differences between all the countries. And doing it through the chi-square difference test, which I talked about a little bit yesterday, that would take like 3 days. It would take a really long time, maybe a whole day of intense concentration. So that's why I made this. Just like the button says, put the regression weights table, copy in A2, grab the other group by toggling again, bottom left toggle to female, and then copy that regression weights table, copy, A2, and then over here, hidden off screen, in S2, you'll put the critical ratios table, which is in the pairwise parameter comparisons area, clicking on critical ratios. This is a nice small model, so it's not a big deal. But boy, when it's a big model, it's a pain in the rear. There we go. Went a little fast. We did this yesterday, so it's not all new. We have two groups, male and female, and each regression on a line here, so from playfulness to usefulness. For male, the effect is 0.418, for female is 0.346. Both have significant effects. There is, in the Z column, there is no significant difference between these two effects, the one for male and the one for female. Now there is for this one. We're looking generally for something above 1.96 on an absolute scale. This is 1.97, luckily. And it says that the effect from usefulness to decision quality, that positive effect, for males is far stronger than for females at a 99%. 99%. I don't know. 2 stars, P value 0.5, 95% confidence level. We can say that the effect of usefulness to decision quality is stronger for males than for females in the context of our sample. Yes?
Not here, but sometime when I use this, I mean, this you have one, when you go into decision quality, let's assume that 0.05 is a little bit bigger than that.
Okay. Not significant at all.
So if the Z-score is not significant, so it says there is no difference. But on the other side,
It is
significant. We have a significant.
This is a great question. Okay, so yeah, what if for males this effect is significant, but for females it's not significant? Surely there's some moderation going on. It's a great predictor for males. It's a terrible predictor for females. And that's the extent that you can claim. Is not that these are different. You can't say that this is different from this. You can't, because it's not. Because there's too much error to determine whether it is different. Because this Z value isn't high enough. This critical ratio isn't strong enough to say, yes, these two estimates are different. All we can say is, well, for males, it's significant. For females, pretending that's higher, it's not significant. Therefore, there is moderation going on. We can't say that it's different for males than for females, but we can say that enjoyment is a good predictor of decision quality for males, but not for females. That's what we can claim. Good question. And that's super easy. That's multi-group moderation. So much easier than mediation. If you want to do it the hard way, because some of you are masochists, you know that, or your reviewers are, at least. They like to see others in pain. At least that's what I believe. You can do it the hard way with a chi-square difference test. I have videos on that. Just Google it. There are some other videos on it too on YouTube. So I walk you through how to do it. And I have a tool for that as well if you want to do it the hard way. But I don't like teaching the hard way because I don't like pain. Okay. That's multi-group moderation. Let's do interaction. Interaction's a bit different. Let's use frequency. We're not going to pull it in. What we're going to do, let me go back to this slide here. Slide. Yeah, remember the way to test interaction is to multiply the predictor by the moderator and then include them both in that model. We have 5 minutes before our break. Let's take the break right now. Is that all right? And then we'll come back in about 20 minutes and we'll do interaction. Of course.
it's going to be a very simple one. I'm just trying to head around it. Now, for mediation, we are using reason variable.
Mhm.
And for these ones, we are using
It's using these boxes, yeah.
concrete variables, right? But
We should talk about this as a group. Yeah, go ahead.
in case of mediation, in any ways, we can create this average, right?
Mhm.
So it's going to be anyways ratio interval variable.
Okay.
I'm just trying to understand the differences.
Between
Mediation and moderation, the variables itself. That's why I'm trying to ask you. So for moderation, we can use entities.
Mhm.
And for mediation, it's a latent construct.
You can. Well, we did mediation.
Well, yeah,
We used,
it ended up to be an event.
Yeah.
Included,
and we did moderation this way too. Now you can do them both with a latent construct as well. The only difference is with the multi-group moderator, you couldn't use a latent construct. But most multi-group moderators, such as age, gender, industry, they're not latent anyway.
Yes.
They're categorical.
Yes.
And so they work as multi-group moderators. Now everything else can be latent. It's totally fine.
Okay.
But that moderator can't really be latent. A multi-group moderator can't be latent.
Multi-group, but others can.
Yeah. And an interaction moderator that we'll talk about in a bit, it can totally be latent. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really complicated when you do it that way, but it can be. The theory around it and our argument and how to test it. And then you realize, oh, cool, I'm theorizing moderated mediation, moderated moderation. That's terrible. I don't want to test that. But typically you theorize it, and then you realize, well, usually, in order to test it, you have to go look at the indirect effects. Let's say you're doing moderated mediation. You're saying that the mediator effect is different for men and women. So you'd have to go look at the indirect effect for one group, and then the indirect effect for the other group, and then test whether those two indirect effects are significant. So you would stumble upon this. You'd have to intentionally go match it. Unless you write the code for it. Right. Which is essentially what you're doing in M+ anyway, right? Writing the code for it.
Yeah, you're constantly writing, just telling them exactly. That's what I have.
I think a lot of people, yeah, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know scenarios and thinking what's going on. They violate assumptions. Yeah, well, instead of stopping it, you better to learn it properly.
Well, that's why I said I'm here.
Not easy to understand, but it's the same thing with Amos and other SEM graphical software, because you can get things to run and not know what you're doing. Whereas in M+, SAS, and other things
hard to get it to run if you don't know what you're doing. Generated from that. Oh my.
I was proving that, and I was just messing around with it. I just put that.
That's really cool.
So I picked this up.
You did that for SQLs. Same thing, different concepts. Yeah.
So, but it turned out to be a lot of fun. So what happened was these three things, I think I was asleep. So I was going to make that up. I was going to get that experience. But this is.
I'm looking at that. See, next time.
This is my yeah. So
the indirect effect will be like.
It's not. There's this slightly. I lost this. I lost that cat. So what I had to do was, I had to spend my words talking about this. I had to go into this. I don't know. So anyway, I had to spend a lot of time. Okay, and here I just found this, that this software, as I told that was specific in it. So that's why, that's why I wrote that in. I wrote that right.
That's
Is that correct?
Yes.
For me to say, because I was looking at each one separately.
Yeah, and that's what you're trying to do. If you're mediating.
One sheet inside and one sheet outside. Is what but I lost this path, so I just ended up reading this one. Right, but before.
The one there were two, you need to.
I had to do it, and then it came off.
Yeah.
This is such a small tiny thing. And that's what the young kids, they don't really
There might be a moderator there.
that's the thing.
That's
kind of above my head. That's what I was curious to hear you.
Yeah, so what you do in that case, you take the mediate effect, indirect effect, and then you do a slope comparison. Having shown that if you Google differences in slopes testing, Daniel Silver has one for that as well. And it just takes the slope, so they understand that is indirect effect, and the error for that, and sample size for each group. Cool. And then it just makes the comparison based on the sample size with the slope and the effect. There was two of these ratio. Okay, the ones after the five.
Yeah. Yeah, so anyway, all right, so I just wanted to get that straight.
Cool.
And it was a bizarre finding. Find anything about that person. I think the first really that, and at least going on in our field. I'm sure it's going on everywhere, but we're rejecting these as words. So how are we going to know? How do we feel?
Good point. Good point. I think it's a great idea. Stir up.
I want to wait on that.
I literally did this exact same thing with a construct in our field, where they compress it all into one. I said, no, it's happening in order.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, we're going to cover that.
It's for me, it's part of the relationship. It's not just but then when we do this interaction, when I connect with this regression, we make this interaction. And then because of this trade, perfect link, this one. So this score is our change. And the plus minus is like very high negative sign. All these are positive, and this infection conflict doesn't make sense.
Right. So what you're really doing, you're not going to be multiplying this effect by this effect. You're multiplying the values respondents gave for these two variables. And so that won't change this. This is a very difficult thing to understand. In regressions, we're only looking at distributions and variance. And the variance doesn't change whether it's positive or negative. It's a distance from and so whether this was negative and this was positive, and therefore we can positive and negative effects, positive, negative, the distance, the absolute distance is unchanged. And so it won't have a confounding invalid effect on whatever this effect is. That's really not very good.
How do you know both however, when I think we might become the same to become more, but I believe it's coming from the center, not necessarily.
So the literature this way, it won't change actually. If you're going to try both ways, if you're going to center it and then don't center it, you have to put 10 decimal points identical to that. You should try that.
If I do something, okay, it's good.
Okay, so center
So I have center.
but the actual effect and the line won't change. Crazy. You think it would make some difference, but it doesn't. Silent change. I played with it, the
Yeah.
and I emailed there was a Matthew Taylor, one of those guys. I asked him how many methods of these colors. I still didn't understand it. So I just did it. I still don't know. It works. That's all I know. So I'm taking that one on faith right now.
Programmer as well.
Oh, yeah, you got it.
I didn't play it yet.
I'm just download you iOS. So do that on iOS. I download it. It's over 16. It's free.
It's great. No, it's cool. I sister. My little brother's 4 years old. Hardcore computer program, built games already.
Whoa, holy cow.
I know that, but what he talked about, I have no idea what he's talking about, of course, yeah. So he asked for a Raspberry Pi. Yeah,
Good stuff.
so I just ordered it. And I think I ordered the wrong one.
Oh, no. Yeah, there's a new one. There's a brand new one.
The B2 Plus.
Yeah.
One. What is the difference?
So Raspberry Pi is a USB computer. It's a whole computer on a USB. And so you have a computer here, where it's sitting back in the back there. That's the whole computer. It runs your operating system and everything. But the Raspberry Pi is a whole computer on a chip. Which is good.
So what do you do with it though? You just
Linux folks or Unix folks who like the best one. That sort of stuff. You can build stuff for that you can't build in Windows or on the Mac because it's more open. You can make stuff with it. You can hack and stuff with it.
he was all of them.
Oh, really? I still you can do that.
I know.
I gotta grab a snapshot of it. I hope you download the game now. I will.
Sorry that everybody's so dedicated, but we're going to take a group picture outside for this event, right? Maybe just 2 minutes because our PR person is available today, and she will not be available tomorrow. So yes, it's the best time to take that group picture, right? So we'll get it outside right now.
There's a few places in town that I thought mine was at,
Okay. Wait.
And all true.
Almost everybody's back. We'll wait a sec. Almost everybody back? Almost. Well, wait. I think we have a few missing from over here. Any other questions while we wait for a few others? Maybe I'll do a brief review while we're waiting for the others. One thing I mentioned yesterday, some of you might have missed. When you have more than two groups, we use gender, just two groups in gender, typically, depending on the state. But for us, just male and female. And what if you had more than two groups and you wanted to make these comparisons? Well, you do group A to group B, and then do group A to group C, and then group B to group C. Or group A to group BC, lump those guys together, group B to group AC, and group C to group AB. And that's how you do it. Because you can't compare all of them simultaneously. Interaction. Let's do interaction. We're going to use this same model here. We're going to use this same model that we have here, but we're going to throw frequency in as an interaction variable. Now, the way we do this is we multiply, and you have to do that in SPSS first. So go ahead and open your SPSS _C file. And I'll wait for you to get that open. You're going to go to transform. Wow, actually, somebody brought this up earlier. When you do an interaction, there is a school of thought that says you must center your variables prior to doing the interaction. Otherwise, you run the risk of multicollinearity, which we haven't talked about at all. But essentially, multicollinearity is when two variables explain the same variance in a dependent variable. Sort of like we saw with playfulness and enjoyment. Playfulness explained a certain amount of variance in enjoyment, or decision quality, I guess it was, excuse me. Playfulness explained variance in decision quality. That was also explained by enjoyment. They are multicollinear. And so in order to avoid the potential multicollinear effect between an interaction term, let me go back to here, over here, these are going to be multicollinear to some extent, and so are these, because this is made up of this and this. So there is going to be some multicollinearity. One way to avoid that is to center your variables. Now, there's also a lot of literature out there that says that does absolutely no good. That's useless. But the truth of the matter is, sometimes it has an effect. It's magical. Sometimes it doesn't. What harm does it do to standardize your variables? Absolutely none. So at the risk of, to avoid the risk of multicollinearity, go ahead and center your variables, and I'll show you how to do that. Essentially what you're doing is you're subtracting the mean away from the value that's in there, and then the mean is now 0. We're also going to standardize them, which means we make the standard deviation 1. So let's do that. In SPSS, you would go to Analyze, Descriptives, Descriptives. So Analyze, Descriptives, Descriptives. And what we're going to do is we're going to standardize the two variables we're multiplying. Do I have to standardize all the other variables in my model? The answer is no. If you do, it will absolutely not change anything. You get the exact same coefficients. I've tested this with and without standardizing. You get the exact same coefficients. So we're going to be multiplying playfulness by frequency. So let's throw playful in here and frequency in here. It's up here. I need to explain what frequency is. I wonder if I have it in here. We'll run this and then I'll see if I have the actual scale in here. So what you're going to do, you're going to stick them in here, and the only thing we need to worry about is this box right down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see, it's kind of below some of these computers. It says save standardized values as variables. So this is going to be the mean centering we're doing plus standardization, making the standard deviation of equal 1. So if I hit OK, after checking that box, it'll create 2 new variables. If you go to the end of your data set, you'll see Z playful and Z frequency. Those are the standardized variables. And you'll notice they fall around 0. If I go just look at these, don't follow me at this point. I'm just going to show you. Go explore. Go look at those last 2. Z play, Z frequency. Throw them in here. Show me a plot. Show me a histogram. If I hit OK, you'll see the histogram. Let me show it here. The mean is now 0, and the standard deviation is 1. You can see up here, here are the values. That says the mean is negative 5.23 e to the negative 4, roughly 0, right? And the standard deviation is 1.00261, so 1. So that's what we did. We mean centered them, standardized them, and now we need to multiply them. So go to Analyze, Transform, Compute, and we're going to name a new variable. We're going to call it play underscore x underscore frequency, or maybe just freak so it's shorter. You can't have any spaces in there. That's why I put underscores. And this is going to be, scroll down to the very bottom, it's going to be double-click play times asterisk frequency. Play times frequency. And hit OK. That created a new variable for us. If we go back to our data set, we see a new variable, play times frequency. Now, I want to hurt your brains and hurt my brain for a bit. And I don't have an answer to this. I'm just being provocative for a moment. Notice, play, this value here, 0.0098, that's a positive number. This is a positive number. We just multiplied those together. We get a positive number. How about this one? Positive number. Uh-oh, negative number. Uh-oh, we have a negative number. Oh, that's trouble. What about these two? Negative, negative. Now we have a positive. How on earth can we now regress with this totally warped variable when we were working with two negatives, and now it's a positive. We're working with a positive and a negative, now it's a negative. How does that even work? I have no idea. It does, though. I think I'm kidding. I have no idea. And here's the explanation given to me by Mr. Taylor of Matthew and Taylor. I believe it was him. Maybe it was Matthew. I can't remember which one. I was a doctoral student, and I saw this. And I was like, uh-oh, that hurts. You know, my brain was really hurting. This can't work. This can't possibly work. I just fouled up all my data. And so I emailed him and said, how the heck does this work? He emailed me right back and gave me a nice, beautiful, long explanation. I was so much more confused than when we started. And I still didn't understand it. So I emailed him back and said, that's so kind of you to email me back. I have no clue what you just said. And he said, okay, well, take it on faith. I know it works. Now go try it. You go try with and without standardizing and see what happens. Identical to 10 decimal points. Identical coefficients. My brain hurt even more after that. But I learned a good lesson. Always reply to people who ask me out. So I've done that. But this works. I don't know how it's magic. Again, faith on this one. I know you don't want to hear that from the guy who's teaching you statistics. Faith. Okay. There's some things I do know. This is not one of them. Okay, what we're going to do, we're going to save this data set. You have to save it. If you don't save it, it won't be available in Amos. Go back to Amos. And what we're going to do is we're going to save this. Oh, no, I'm going to make things complicated. We're going to keep this how it is. Okay, save. Go to the data files, file data files. We need to bring in that new data set. So file data files. For male, it's the same data set. We just saved it again, but Amos doesn't know we've saved it. So let's bring it back in. File, bootcamp file. There it is, _C. And for females, do the same thing. There you go. It retained the gender group variable and the value. So what we're doing here is what I'm debating over. What we're doing here is moderated moderation. We don't have to. We can change it, but I figured as long as we're here, we might as well. It's not that much of a stretch. We're doing moderated moderation. We're saying that the interaction effect for females and for males will be different. Moderated moderation. It is possible. Weird to theorize about. Or actually even better. Oh, we have to draw it first. Okay, let's draw it. And then we're going to be doing moderated, mediated moderation. Don't ever do that, by the way. That's just wash your mouth out. That's awful. It is just wrong. Can you imagine theorizing about that? Yeah. Okay. Hit OK. What we're going to do, click on the white stacky thing. Scroll down at the very bottom. Pull out playfulness and stick it where playfulness was. Just drag it into playfulness. Bring out frequency. Stick it right there. Whoa, that's huge. Bring out play times frequency. Stick it somewhere. And then close. That's enormous. Double click it. Get rid of the label. Just double click frequency and get rid of the label. And that'll clear that up. Get rid of the label here too if we really want to. These are all just aesthetic changes. I'm going to use a plugin to resize my observed variables. Plugins, resize observed variables. That makes them all pretty again. Okay. We went to, well, depends on our theory. Okay. What are we doing? Are we saying that the positive effect of playfulness on enjoyment is strengthened by the frequency with which we use Excel? So thinking through that, the more we use Excel, the more our playfulness makes us enjoy it. The less we use Excel, the less our playfulness makes us enjoy it. That makes some sense. Let's do that one. Let's do that one. It makes a lot more sense, though, I think, in the context of usefulness. The more you use Excel, the more you play with it, the more useful it actually is. The less you play with it, or the less you use it, the less you're playing is actually useful. That makes a lot more sense. Okay, one more time. Okay. One more time. The more you use Excel, frequency, the more your playfulness is actually useful when you're playing with Excel. The less you use Excel, the less your playfulness is actually useful. So I'm an avid user of Excel. When I play with Excel, good things happen. It's very useful. Someone else who is not an avid user of Excel, doesn't use it very often, when they play with Excel, things break. Right? It's not very useful. That's what I'm saying. Does that make sense? Let's do that. So theoretically, it's sound-ish. We regress this way. Now, these are exogenous variables, so we need to covary. Like that. Or you could use the plugin if you want. Make it pretty. There we go. And here we are. I'm going to run it. Hope it doesn't blow up. Here we go. We're focusing on this value right here, this interaction effect. This is for females. This is for males. Notice there's like no effect for males. We're useless no matter how often we use Excel. But with females, there's a strong, or not a strong, there's a weakish positive effect, meaning that theory we had, the more they use it, the more playing with it is actually useful. That theory might be held up. Let's go look at the p-value in the output, in the estimates. Let's see, play times frequency to useful, completely useless. No significant effect. That's unfortunate. That was a good theory. You may recall I mentioned you almost never find significant interaction effects. Yeah, that's unfortunate. But let's pretend it was significant. I like to pretend, just not when I'm writing real papers. Okay, let's pretend this was significant. What would we do at this point to demonstrate its significance? First off, we'd say the interaction effect had a significant effect, 0.0 whatever, 0.1 significance. We would then go plot it. So if you go to the Stats Tools package and go to the two-way interaction tab, I appropriated this from Jeremy Dawson. His was real bland, so I pimped it out a little bit and made it so it automatically interprets your interaction for you, which is fun. What you do is you throw in exactly what it asks you for. What is our independent variable? Well, it's playfulness. Our moderator, frequency. What's our dependent variable? In this case, it's usefulness. So those automatically go into the graph. That's another thing we spiffed up a bit. What is the unstandardized regression coefficient from the independent variable to that dependent variable? Well, from playful to useful, it's 0.175. So 0.175. From the moderator, which is frequency, as listed up here, it's, where'd it go? Frequency, 163. And the interaction was something mediocre here, 0.014. And you can see the interaction has no effect. What this says for us, and you can ignore this, I should make another catch when there is no difference. What this does is it takes the standard deviation away from the mean on both ends and says what is the slope between, what is the value at one standard deviation below, what's the value of one standard deviation above, and how are they different between low and high frequency. So we see for high frequency users, the relationship between playfulness and usefulness is stronger in general. This red line is higher than this blue line. So in general, the more you use Excel, the more playing with it will lead to usefulness. It is a stronger effect. But it is not a different slope than the low frequency group. Exact same slope pretty much. And so there is no difference. We're looking for different slopes here. That's how we know an interaction is significant. So for example, if I change this to 0.455, well, that's an interaction, right? Frequency strengthens, actually flips the effect. Let's see, is this positive? No, if there was a positive effect to begin with, frequency strengthens the positive effect between playfulness and usefulness, as indicated by this high frequency line being in a positive direction, whereas the low frequency line is in a negative direction. So the less you use Excel, playing actually does damage. There's a negative effect between play and usefulness. That's what that says. This takes some repeating, I think, to get in, to make sense. This graph is hard to read. You have a lot of variables going on. So we know that there's a positive effect between the independent variable and the dependent variable. We know that that effect is stronger, more positive slope for those who use Excel very often. And it's actually a negative effect for those who don't use Excel very often. That's what that's saying. And so the interpretation is frequency strengthens the positive relationship between playful and useful. And that's moderator, interaction moderator. Should we do another example? Interactions are tricky. What we're actually doing, not that I want to confuse further or muddy it up any further, that was just for the female group. Here's for the male group. And this interaction is actually being mediated by useful onto decision quality. So if we really wanted to, we could try to find out what the indirect effect between interaction and decision quality was, and then see if that's different between males and females. Then you have moderated, mediated, moderation. Don't think about that. Let's just pretend we have all one group right now. Okay. Should we do another example? Yes. Okay. Good. Thank you, lone spokesperson. Let me get rid of play times frequency. Actually, I'll just leave it in there and replace it. Okay. Let's go back to SPSS. Let's create another one. Analyze descriptives. Descriptives. Do I have people who are going to follow along, point and click, or should I just go through it? We have some follow along. Okay, so analyze descriptives, descriptives, like we did before. We already did playfulness and frequency. We can throw those out. What do you think strengthens these relationships? When playing is enjoyable, because we can get rid of enjoyment in the model. When it's atypical, I'd love to see atypical. When your playfulness is atypical, it strengthens the relationship. That'd be kind of cool. I don't know if it will. Let's try. Here's atypical use. Okay. Ooh! Let's also do decision quality. When your playfulness leads to better decision quality, I think that there's a good interaction there. Then it could be considered useful. I like that. Make sure you save standardized values down here at the very bottom. Hit OK. We'll go make those calculations. Go to transform, compute variables. And instead of play times frequency, we now have play times decision quality, DQ. And instead of frequency here, it's just decision quality, or you go down here and find it. It's at the very bottom, right there. Hit OK. And let's just run that one more time for atypical use. I better bring it in. I don't know how I spelled it. Let's see. Atyp use. And OK. So we now have those new variables. Again, we have to go back to our data set, save. Notice that's not saving the output. It's saving the data set. Those are two different things. Save the data set and bring it back into Amos. Link those data files. So you have the data relinked after it has been saved in SPSS. Yes?
Testing interaction. Do you always use standardized, or do you always multiply those two to?
Multiply, yes. Do you always use standardized? I would say yes, but there's literature out there that says you don't have to. But it will not make any effect. Let me show you actually. Let's look at something real quick. Let me run this model. I haven't changed anything. Hit the up arrow. We see for these, let's see. If you can remember these numbers, 28, 31, 3, 55. Yeah? How about I just take a picture of them? There we go. Let me go stick it somewhere. There it is, 28, 31, 3, 55. Let's go replace those values with their non-standardized partners. Okay, so frequency, where'd you go? Frequency. Here it is. Oh, that's gender. Frequency and playful. So these are not standardized. And now I could also go run the multiplication. Just trust me on this one, it won't change. Let me get rid of this ugliness. There we go. Let me run this. Hit the up arrow. 28, 31, 3, 55. 28, 31, 3, 55. They're identical. Nothing changed. So why bother? Supposedly, according to half and more dated literature, it removes multicollinearity issues. And in some cases, it does. But in most cases, there's no effect. So when do you do it? Always do it, because it's not going to hurt. It didn't change a thing. Yeah. All right. Let's throw in those other variables we just created. We want to see decision quality. Ooh, that means I'll have to kill decision quality on the other end. Okay. So, oops. Can't pull things in when the up arrow's hit. Hit the down arrow. Go back to the white stacky thing. Pull in play times decision quality. I need to then bring decision quality over to the left. Notice decision quality is my dependent variable. Well, I can't very well put it in both places. So let me bring it over here. There we go. I can kill frequency. I'm not using that anymore. And then, oops, sorry. And then covary them. So here's our new model with an arrow right there. Let's move all this. There we go. The model's not symmetric. Is that okay? Yeah. Theories aren't always symmetric. Let's run it. Hit the up arrow. Go to standardized. Look at this effect right here. Well, that's lame. For males, it's negative 0.04. That's not going to be significant. For females, negative 11. There's a chance. Go look at the output. Estimates. Nope, not even close. It's not significant. Look at that p-value, 0.425. We could plot it. And we say that the independent variable in this case is, again, playful. The moderator is decision quality. And the dependent variable is useful. The effect from the independent variable to the dependent variable, play to useful, is 0.222. The moderator to the dependent variable, which is decision quality, is 0.585. Right there. And then the interaction effect is negative 0.014. Negative 0.014. Notice the lines are parallel again, meaning there is no difference. No difference. So, decision quality does not moderate the relationship between playful and useful. It's the same whether you have good decisions or bad decisions coming out of Excel. It's the same. The same regarding the effect playfulness has on usefulness. The effect is both. The effect is positive for both of them. So even though this says this, it's not true. The effect is so minor. Okay. Any questions about interaction? Here's what I want to do. I want to take a, we're good. I want to take a continuous variable, such as frequency, and turn it into a categorical variable, and then test the same relationship. Let's do that. So I'm going to make a high and a low in SPSS. The way to do that, there are many different ways. If you have a ton of data, the best way is to take, let me show you, is to go to data, rank cases. Where are you? Maybe it's transform. Where'd it go? Halfway down. There's rank cases. Transform, rank cases. What we're going to do, we're going to take frequency. Let me go down to frequency. Just the unstandardized version. And we're going to go to rank types. And we're going to say just split frequency by its rank. And give me 4 equal groups, or 3 equal groups, or 2 equal groups. If we select 2, it'll split it on the median and say everybody below the median is a low group, everybody above the median is a high group. If you have a lot of data like we do, we have 381, maybe you should do 3 groups and then say the low group is the first third, the high group is the last third, everybody in the middle, you're in the middle, so you don't represent any group. We want high versus low, right? So let's do that. High versus low, I'll do 3 groups. Hit continue or OK. And it's going to do that for us. The way we know it worked, if we go to analyze, at this point I expect you're not following along, I just want to show you frequency, go down to that new one, N frequency, stick that over there. We can see that it's kind of low, can't scroll down any further. But in the first group, the low frequency group, we have 130 individuals. In the middle group, we have 67, and in the high group, we have 182. That worked out pretty well, actually. But the middle group that we're getting rid of is very small. That's fabulous. Okay, so we're actually going to end up using 48 plus 34. We use 82% of the data. That's great. Did I do that math right? I think so. Okay. So what we'll do is we'll go back to our data set, save it, go back to Amos, and I'm going to get rid of one of these groups at this point. I'm going to double click female, hit delete. This has nothing to do with females. I'm going to rename male all. It's just all the data. Close. So we're going to run this for all the data. I'm going to get rid of play times DQ because we know that doesn't work. And we'll just test it on this model for a bit. Okay. Go bring in that data that we just saved. Data files. Double click. Go find your data. Now it's still split at gender, so I have to get rid of that grouping variable. So I'm going to go to grouping variable, no variable, right here. Say don't group it. Again, that was grouping variable, no variable. So I'm back to 381. Oh, that's right, we're doing multi-groups. I should have just kept those groups. Duh. Oh well, here's what we'll do. Sorry. Double click all data, again, that group, and we'll just say low frequency. Sorry about that. And then the new group will be high frequency. We should have just kept male and female in there and then rename them. High frequency. You have two groups again. This will be just like we did for male and female. So you know how to do this. Go back to the data, load that data for both groups, and set a grouping variable for both. But in this case, the grouping variable is the last variable, the n frequency. And this one, n frequency. And the grouping value is 1 and 3. 1 for the low group, and 3 for the high group. How many do I have actually following along clicking? I need to know. Okay, we do have a few following. Okay. Tell me if I go too fast, because I am going a little bit faster. I'm going to try to get through controls today as well. So we should have 130 in one group, 182 in another group. Hit OK. Run this just like before. Hit run. Hit the up arrow. Center everything. Whoa, zoom out. Okay. We see for the low frequency group, the effects are 20, 55, 54. For the high frequency group, 22, 54, 53. Absolutely no difference. But had there been a difference, that would have been really cool. But that's how you do it. You can take a metric variable, turn it into a categorical variable, and test it in multi-groups. But this is maybe the reason we didn't find any interaction, because there is no difference. Okay. I think that covers it for moderation. Yes. Any questions about moderation at all? Okay. Okay. Here we go. This is the last thing with structural models that we're going to talk about. Then tomorrow we get to experiment with cluster analysis, which will be lots of fun. Control variables. So whenever you do a study, you need to have some control variables in there. Why? Well, like that example we just had, if we didn't control for the effect of enjoyment, we'd think playfulness drove decision quality. So what are control variables versus all the other stuff we stick in there? Controls are those variables that could have an effect on our dependent variable, but that we don't really want to theorize about. We need to control or account for their effects because they might confound our model, but we don't want to theorize about them. A really good example of this in organizational studies is when you're studying firm performance, the #1 cause of firm performance is firm size. Every time. It's the biggest explainer of firm performance. If you have a lot of employees, you're going to have better performance, just the way it works. And so if you run a study on firm performance and you don't control for firm size, we cannot rely on your results, period. So you need to control for firm size. And then if you do control for it, you can say with confidence, this new variable explains firm performance, even while accounting for firm size. Regardless of firm size, this variable can predict firm performance. How do you treat them in AMOS? Just like any other IV. So if I were to draw them in AMOS, let's say I want to control for age right here, the effect of age on enjoyment. I just throw age in here. Let me go get age. Way down there, there it is, age. I drag it in here. I'd regress it just like this. I'm controlling for the effect of age on enjoyment. Do I need to covary these? Depends on who you ask. The answer is you could. Do we think they'll be theoretically, conceptually, should they be related? Age and playfulness? Maybe. Age and decision quality? Well, in life in general, definitely. With Excel, maybe. I don't know. So if you think that there should be a relationship, just theoretically, go ahead and throw those covariances in. If not, you don't have to worry about it too much. If you don't put them in, it does give you some additional degrees of freedom to play with, which helps with model fit. Okay, so here we are. If we run this, hit the up arrow, we're saying that, first off, age has no real effect on enjoyment, at least for this high-frequency group. But we can say now with confidence that playfulness predicts enjoyment, even while accounting for age. Regardless of your age, playfulness has a positive effect on enjoyment. This is really important, and there's some really cool studies that have done this. I love this slide. This is a fun slide. I don't know how to pronounce that. You might. German, maybe. But these guys, Americanized German, these guys in 1985 wanted to predict obesity with TV time and school performance with TV time. Now, their theory was the more you watch TV, the fatter you're going to be and the stupider in school you're going to be. That's a bold claim. And so they said, oh yeah? Well, regardless of whether you were fat before, regardless of where you're from, because people from Mississippi tend to be a little bigger. All right. I live in Mississippi, so. All right. Regardless of the season of the year, because in the winter, we tend to be a little heavier. Regardless of population density, this gets back to region, really. Regardless of race, because there are differences. Regardless of socioeconomic status, regardless of so many other genetic differences, they accounted for all of this. They regressed all of these on obesity. And they still found a significant positive effect from TV time to obesity. So now they can come back and say, see? And what are you going to do as a reviewer? You're like, but what about? No, they covered everything pretty much. So they are able to isolate this unique effect. Despite all this stuff, regardless of that, there is still an effect. Now, what you should really be doing also is mention the R square. Does the R square change when you add TV time? Because it should. If it has a meaningful effect, the R square should increase. I love this one. School performance, same idea. They said TV time decreases school performance. And they said despite IQ, whether you read for fun, how many hours you spend doing homework or how much time you spend with your parents doing schoolwork. Regardless, the more TV you watch, the worse you're going to do in school. Those of you with kids, probably thinking right now. I have 4 daughters. Yeah, we're careful. They're good. They're good. Anyway, that's the power of controls. You're able to say with much more confidence that what you're doing is valid and your findings are valid. Okay, so how do you do it? I showed you already in Amos. Let me show you something. Let's look at Amos one more time. Okay, we had this R squared 0.29 with age in there. Let me remove it and run it again. 0.28. What does this tell us? Age doesn't explain very much, but we're accounting for it. Now, you can do it the other way around as well. Let's throw age back in there. There's age right there. Oop, up arrow's on. There we go. It's saying age accounts for some of the variance in enjoyment. Get rid of playfulness. That's an awful model. Let me covary these. Okay, let's go look at the R square on enjoyment. The R square is 0.01 on enjoyment. When I add playful in there, R square is going to jump up to 0.29 or 0.28, whatever it was. And we can say, yeah, playful adds significant contribution here to explaining the variance in enjoyment. Yeah? That's controls. Controls are super easy. They take 10 minutes. So I strongly recommend when you do controls, do both. Do it with the controls, without the controls. Do it with controls, without the predictors, so you can show the meaningful difference.
But those controls have to be continuous variables.
Oh, very good point. And you should cover this the first day. What if we want to control for, let me go down here. Oops. Child order. What if I want to control for child order? I want to know, well, if you're a first child, last child, or a middle child, or an only child, how does that affect enjoyment? You can't do that. Not like this, at least. Not in Amos. What you need to do, and I covered this the other day, what we do is you make binary variables, they're called dummy variables, for each of the potential values here. So you have a binary value for first, and there's a new variable in your data set. If you're a first child, you get a 1 in that column. If you're not a first child, you get a 0. And then there's another column for last. If you're a last child, you get a 1 in that column. If you're not, you're a 0, etc., etc. And then you can throw those in here and use them to predict enjoyment. And then despite whether you're first, last, middle, or only, all those different variables, then you can say, yeah, there's still an effect from playfulness. But that's how you include a non-metric, a categorical control
Just
variable.
like regression, you create dummy variables.
Yep.
You can feed them one by one.
Yep.
Can you feed them all together?
You feed them all
Because your
together.
dummies would be the number of categories minus 1.
Right. So in Amos, no, you need all of them in there. Yeah. Yes.
If you have categories for age, let's say from 18 to 25.
Oh, okay. This is a good question.
I returned to the question I asked you yesterday, 25 to 30, 30 to 35.
Yeah.
What you're going to do? Are you
So yeah, sometimes we collect age, not the exact number, but in buckets, right, in bins. It depends on who you ask. If your intervals are equal, say they're all 10-year intervals, then you can just stick it in like any old variable, stick it in like age. Now, understand that because it's an interval variable and you're not capturing the raw number, that this regression line doesn't represent an exact slope. We can't say an increase in 1 in this age variable leads to an increase of x in the y variable, because we're not using an exact number. But typically, we're looking at standardized values anyway, and those are relative effects. And so we can look at the amplitude and the direction, whether it's positive or negative, and then we can still use it in that way. Yeah. Education is the same way, right? Is a master's degree one more than a bachelor's degree? But it does increase in the trait of education. So you can include it like that, just be careful in interpretation. That's control variables. All the structural models. I have some other stuff I'd love to show you. I think we have half an hour. So unless there are more questions with this. Yes.
So what is the difference between putting a control variable, the categorical control variable, or the dummy variable into this, as opposed to using multi-group categorical moderator?
I asked this exact same question when I was a student. I asked the professor, I said, wow, controls sound a lot like moderators. They're the same, right? He says, well, sort of. You're accounting for their effects, right? But a moderator, you're explicitly theorizing about. You expect significant differences in this path based on that moderator. With a control, we're saying, yeah, this path might change due to the effects of the moderator. We don't care really. We just want to make sure it's still significant, despite the despite the control variable.
So with control, you're reading out your suspicions.
Yes, With controls, you're weeding out your suspicions, you're covering your bases. Yeah. With moderators, you're making an explicit theory regarding the change in relationship of different groups. Okay, anything else? Good questions. Yeah, if something comes up, feel free. There are a couple extra things I wanted to show you. Let me close that. Let's see, controls, here's a slide on it. If you want a great article on controls, check out Becker, 2005. Oh, I didn't talk about this. I've brought up multicollinearity. I haven't shown you how to test it. Let's do that. Let me show you how to test multicollinearity. Let's sit for a sec. We'll do this in SPSS. So one assumption we're making in SEM is that our predictor variables are not multicollinear. They're not covering the same amount of they're not explaining the same variance in the dependent variable as each other. So one way we can test this is in SPSS. If we go look at, oh blast, it's been a while, regression, linear. We haven't played with this yet. Linear regression. Most of you have done a linear regression, so I'm not too worried about this. You go to regression, linear, and then stick your dependent variable in there. In our case, let's use usefulness down at the very bottom here. Useful, there it is our dependent variable. And let's throw multiple independent variables in there, like playfulness and enjoyment. And the question we're trying to determine right now is, do playfulness and enjoyment both explain unique variance in our dependent variable, usefulness? Or do they explain the same variance and so they're redundant? What you do, go to statistics, way over here, and check the box for collinearity diagnostics. And continue. That's all you need for this. Hit OK. Again, that was statistics, collinearity diagnostics. Hit OK. And it comes up with, let's scroll down, comes up with this coefficients table right here. We'll look at two things, although they are synonymous, just different measures. We'll look at the VIF and the tolerance level. So they'll be the same. In the VIF, we're looking for values less than, depends on who you read, the maximum threshold here is 10. But some people say 3, some people say 5. 10 is the maximum threshold. We're looking for tolerance levels greater than, again, this depends on who you talk to, but 0.1 is what we're looking at. We want values greater than 0.1 at the very worst, 0.1. And if we meet those criteria, in this case we do, we're fine. This says that playfulness and enjoyment explain different parts of usefulness. They both explain different parts, enough of different parts. They might have some overlap, as it's shown by their variable inflation factor, but they're significantly different enough that they're not a problem. So that's multicollinearity, and that's how you would test it. There's also linearity. So another assumption of Amos and of covariance-based structural equation modeling is that your relationships you're theorizing are linear, because Amos can't test a curvilinear relationship. And so the regressions it gives you, those are literal slopes. Those are linear relationships instead of a curve, a bell, or something like that, an S. How would you show that there is a sufficient linear relationship to be testing it in Amos? You go to Analyze Regression, Curve Estimation. What we're going to do is we're going to say, here's an independent variable, here's a dependent variable. Estimate all possible curves and tell me which one works best, including a linear relationship, which is just a straight curve, I guess. So curve estimation. Give me a dependent variable. It's going to be usefulness again. And our independent variable in this case, let's make it playful. And what models do we want? We want them all. We want logarithmic, linear, inverse, quadratic, cubic, power, compound, S, logistic, growth, and exponential. These are all possible curves that could exist, that could explain the relationship between these two variables. And hit OK. It's going to calculate all that it can. In this case, it did calculate all of them, so that's kind of cool. It even plots them all down here for you. But here's this table we want to look at. So on each row, we have a different test: linear, logarithmic, inverse, quadratic. We have R squared for each F value, that's a critical value. And then we have our sig column, is it significant? So first we look at the sig column. They're all significant. That's useless. All right, so we can model this any way we want. Look at our F column. Where's the biggest value? The first one, actually, linear. That's a good sign. That means the best way to model this is linear. R squared, which one explains the most variance? Cubic or quadratic? Why? Because you have more elbows. You have more flexibility in explaining variance when you have more elbows. So those will almost always be the high ones. But look at this. 128 versus 129, 130. Not really. If you round, they're all 13%. Not a big deal. So we have sufficient evidence to say that this is adequately linear in order to test it in Amos. Do you have to do this and report this in your paper? Nobody's going to ask for this except those crazy, really gung-ho statistician viewers. But there it is. Now, what if this was not the highest F value? What if this is not the highest R squared value? What then? If it's significant, that means there is a significant linear relationship that exists. It is sufficiently linear. It might not be the best way to model it, but it is sufficiently linear to be tested in Amos. What if it's not even significant? Then you got real problems. You might need to go back and look at your data, find out why it's not, model it, see if there's some weird curves going on. You go down here and look at it, see if there are shapes that are distinguishable in this plot. In our case, there's not much of a shape, it's sort of. But you might detect shapes that would cue you into what's going on. You might have bimodal data, in which case it's linear for one group and it's linear for another group. But when you put all the data together, since it's bimodal, you're going to see a weird curve in there. It's going to be heavy here, or heavy here, heavy there. And so you'll see a weird S shape. But when you split the data, it's fine. And you're going to split the data to moderate anyway, so it's fine. You just have to test it separately in your linearity test. Okay, that's linearity. And now the worst of them all, homoskedasticity. That's just horrible to say. And then heteroskedasticity. All right, how do we do this again? Sorry, what? I'm sorry? What about it? So this is so weird. Heteroskedasticity typically has a K in there. Homoskedasticity usually has a C in there. Yeah, it's as if it weren't confusing enough, right? Yeah. Okay. I have to remember how to calculate this. Is it in regression? That doesn't make sense for it to be in regression. You're gonna plots. It is. Okay. In linear regression. So again, analyze regression linear. And I haven't explained what this is, but I'll explain it as we go. Go to linear, go to plots, and you want the dependent variable as the y, and you want the z residual as the x.